additions, deletions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is approval of the minutes from our July 9th meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support? I'll support it. Are there any suggestions, changes, comments? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes of July 9th indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, our approval of the bills. Vouchers 7.1.2019 to 7.30.2019. Are there any comments, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the bills.
Move to approve the bills.
Supported. Any comments? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, we have our review of statement of revenues and expenditures. It's really an update of our budget progress so far in the fiscal year. I believe it's through 5 months of the fiscal year. I didn't notice anything. Are there any questions? If not, we'll just receive and file those. And finally, we have the approval of the Treasurer's Report for July of 2019. May I have a motion to approve the Treasurer's?
Motion to approve the Treasurer's Report.
I will support that.
Any questions? If not, all in favor of approving the Treasurer's Report indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next on the agenda is public comment. I see we have a couple gentlemen from Suez here this evening. Mr. Flavin, did you want to speak? Or okay. You're welcome to if you want to. So, at any rate, nobody else in the audience, so we'll move on. We have some action items to take care of. The first action item is a recommendation to approve revenue bonds, and I'll get into that. Let me find that item. Okay, you all have a report, a very detailed financial report from our director. The motion would be to recommend to the Grosse-Ile Township Board the solicitation and sale of revenue bonds in the amount of $6 million to finance water main repairs, a bar screen project at the wastewater treatment plant. So background on that, I don't know, Derek, do you want me to provide it or do you want to?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. As we approach the budget this year, we had a couple of financial issues that our finance director for the township and probably the treasurer, but came up with unique and creative idea to fund the bar screen project at the wastewater plant, the Park Lane water main, and the Meridian water main. We've identified the Meridian water main, which is about a 2-mile section all the way from Church Road to roughly Macomb Street, where we've had a number of water main breaks, particularly the area between Thoroughfare and Ferry, to take on those projects. This report talks about those projects. And I asked, Derek, you were going to prepare a different sort of outline to hand out to everybody?
Just maybe a little bit more simplistic summary of the finances associated with the bond. And then also a copy of the budget where our bond payments, proposed bond payments would be coming out of within fiscal year 1920.
Derek, what did you use to project an interest rate?
Get to that, John.
Let
Let me get to that.
It's pretty interesting. That's a linchpin of the
We've
situation.
been talking about 4% or less in the current bond market.
Well, I know, but where are you getting those figures from?
John, the figures, Ann actually, I mean, is in contact with our the person we do our bonds with, and she gathers that information, and that's how we come up, how that was they came up with it.
Okay, so it's the actuaries probably.
Yeah, yes.
Well,
it's not the actuary that.
So one or the other,
Yeah.
or both.
Well, we have a financial advisor,
Right.
and then we have a bond counsel. We have legal
Correct.
counsel.
And John, you can look on the website of the financial advisors, what bond sales are going for.
I'm just interested in what judgment and statistics were utilized or information was utilized in order to come up with that number.
Right, but
And
it's-
one of the reasons is because a lot of times there's a lower interest rate as a result of some of the tax forgiveness on the income
Sure.
on bonds.
Sure.
So I'm somewhat familiar with it, and there's been a lot of financing here that I was involved in, and the interest rate is really important.
Sure.
Because a half a point means a lot on $6 million. It really does.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, I look on Benzinski's website, and I know she does on Miller Canfield's, what bonds are being sold for? So,
And I'd
we'll
also-
come back to that.
Yeah, and,
That's a
and
good question.
John, just as a note, for the bonds that we've gotten in other areas, the interest rate Ann tells us has been pretty much right on. So I trust that
What are we getting? What's the last bond? What did we get on the last bond?
And these bonds would be a little bit different than some of the other ones. I mean, these are with an enterprise fund and a revenue stream, but she did lay out when, I think, the chairman had talked to her about it, when they established the budget, the details of what we'd be going out for, what the purposes were, and that was all consulted with Bazinski to formulate what that estimated interest rate would be. So,
And Miller Canfield's one of, what, 2 or 3 entities that does bond work?
right, and Miller Canfield would be the bond counsel on this issuance.
correct.
Yep.
Excuse me, did everybody get the budget sheet passed out? I didn't get one.
Oh, you didn't pass you by?
Oh, I
Pass
took
them
one,
down.
I took one and passed the rest down.
Yeah.
I got the first one here.
There was a second one.
There's a second.
I don't
There's
recall getting it.
extras. There's extras.
Oh, okay. So they were together, I see, okay.
They were separate.
Thanks, John. Well, anyway, let me back up a little bit. When we,
Well, that's enough about that right now. I'm just curious. So Miller Canfield and Bazinski, that's where the info came from.
well, they publish on their website, all bond
But-
sales.
Yeah, but where it comes from is more important to me than what a website says.
Right, and she
talks to
she
them.
had conversations with them when the budget was established, and then she's had them recently. As we all know, interest rates have dropped a little bit. So she had a conversation with them not less than a week ago regarding current rates, and the rates that are listed in this action item are those that she had discussed with them not more than a week ago. So
Okay.
they're as up to date as possible.
So as best we know.
Right.
All right, so I want to go through this list here first, and then we'll talk about everything. The first item on I'm looking at the expense list for the projects. That the total is the total's up to $5,750,000. There's been a program priority for Meridian water main from basically Church Road to Macomb. And if we get good enough bids, we'd like to go further towards Bellevue, where we've had a number of water main breaks. That has not been engineered. That's a cost estimate. On my way in tonight, Les mentioned to me concern about possibly not spending it all on Meridian. We'll talk about that, Les?
Yeah.
We can talk about that. But the point is about $3 million, $3.2 million worth of water main repairs, replacement on our worst water mains. The second listed is our bar screen project, and there's some other elements besides just the base bid for the bar screen, and I know Suez is here tonight. But the budget is $1.2 million, and that includes all the administrative and engineering costs and all of the other permitting and all that other information. It's actually a little bit lower. We were forecasting at one point $1.4 million until we got approval from the state, the old MDEQ, as to how the bar screen project would fit in the wet well. Then there's the Park Lane water main project. And I just want everybody to recall, about a year ago, when we talked about the Park Lane water main project, we had no money to finance it. And we had like 21 water main breaks in that section. So what we did is sat down with the finance director, and this was well over a year ago, and we found that from old bond issues, water bond issues were being paid off, that there was funds left in each of the bond issues, and there were several that totaled about $600,000. We aggregated all those to come up with the money, and then we were going to borrow from the wastewater fund $600,000. This project is listed because if we pay this back, we'll pay essentially $600,000 back to the wastewater fund, and the other $600,000 and this is important, Les, based on your concern you expressed, we'd have about $600,000 for other water mains. We sell bonds and include the payback on that, because otherwise we will have depleted our current funding. So that's where we are with that. And then the $100,000 is the estimated bond fees. So what I want you to refer to now is the other handout that was on page 116 of the township's budget, where Ann did an analysis. Has everybody got that in front of them? And if you look at the two highlighted in the darker print, what she shows is last year several bonds were paid off that matured in 2018 and 2019. And her idea was, that's both principal and interest. Her idea was, let's put the Park Lane water main and the Meridian Road water main projects in the budget this year, and the additional cost to do that, we could fund. It's about $150,000 difference from what we were paying the last year. We could fund with the savings that we've occurred with the Great Lakes Water Authority contract. And I know that, Phil, we've talked about that for quite a number of months. So we balanced our budget, and we made a recommendation to approve the budget with that project included in it. We discussed it last April, or last March. So that's basically where the funding would come for to pay for the principal and interest debt. Now, another thing to think about, that money was budgeted this year. The things have not progressed as fast on the bar screen project as we would have liked because of the trouble with getting the bar screen to actually fit in the wet well and getting the permit from MDEQ, and that's taken several months to do that. So where we are in the fiscal year, we probably won't sell bonds till November, which means we probably wouldn't even have an interest payment this year, let alone not a principal payment. Some of that money would be saved that we could, again, as we approach next year's budget, this is my thinking, add it to our capital available budget and do more water main replacements. You know, we've got several water mains that are 70, 75 years old, and we have a number of water main breaks. So what we're setting about here is to we can fund this, and it's funded in the current budget. It should be funded in next year's budget. And the idea that we had is, let's identify the water mains we'd like to fix and get the worst ones fixed where we have the most frequent water main breaks. So that's kind of what this is all about. The bar screen project at the wastewater plant, and Ryan, you're here, but I'll just try to describe it as the effluent, the sewage comes into the plant at about a 40-foot depth. It enters the plant. One thing that's happening is we're catching a lot of plastics that don't dissolve. And every day, manpower has to go down into the wet well and hand pick these out. This bar screen project is something Trenton recently went to. The southern Wayne County Shuva plant just went to, and would automatically take those plastics that don't dissolve up into a hopper, and men wouldn't have to actually come in contact with all that all the time. And so it's a project that about 3 years ago, Joe Keefe, our prior operator, identified, and his budget was about $350,000. And as you can see, that was way off the mark. And so now we're at a budget of about $1.2 million. So those are the projects. So I'll open it up for discussion. Les?
The only thing I'm talking about is the water mains on Church Road.
Mm-hmm.
The one that's west of Meridian, I think the ground is just holding that one together. And then from Meridian to Thoroughfare, that's another old main. And the other one on Church Road is from East River Road up to almost Canterbury. That's one of the original water mains that's left. And then as I went up to the north end of the island before I came to the meeting, I realized that the 6-inch water main that's on Meridian on the west side from Bridge Road down to Owens and then the main that's on Owens, that's a pretty rotten piece of pipe too. So, in my feelings, those should take priority over what you're trying to do from Church Road to Macomb Street.
Okay, so the one you're talking about on Meridian by Owen, where does it go from? Bridge to Owen, or
It
what?
goes from Bridge Road. Matter of fact, it goes north of Bridge Road. It goes all the way up to Paulina. And then it goes to Owens, and then it goes down Owens to West River Road. Now, that main on West River Road and Horse Mill was all replaced. That's new 12-inch main. But we never did do anything with the stuff that is on Owens. And that, whenever they have a break on there, they're shutting those 2 apartment complexes down.
Oh, I know what you mean. Okay. Well, so I certainly am open, and I've noticed one thing. I wish John Kime were here tonight, but a few months back, when we started talking about this, he identified the section of the pipe on the east side of Meridian, Les, from Church.
That's correct. That's the 8-inch main. But then when you get down to Island Drive and Lakewood, that is such a tied-up mess in there to replace some of that. I think it'd be a nightmare. Because that's all tied into the 16-inch main with bypasses and everything else. And to try to replace that would be a nightmare.
All right. So what I noticed as I've looked at that, because I used to live near Ferry, I noticed from the canal, from basically the canal or Lowry, through Ferry to Thoroughfare, which is by Lake and Island,
Right.
that we have 15 water main breaks in that area that you can see evidence of on the road. But I don't see any evidence from Thoroughfare north to Church. So I don't know if there's a reason why we would have a break point from Church down, or
Well, the 8-inch water main is on the west side of the road. Where the Thoroughfare street ends and comes out to Meridian, that's where the 8-inch main on the east side of Meridian ends and then comes across the street into Jewel Colony. And then the main that goes down Thoroughfare ties into that piece of pipe. And it goes down Thoroughfare all the way to Horse Mill.
all right. So let's do this. We have not authorized any engineering on Meridian yet. And this needs to go to the town, from us to the township board. If the township boards approve it, that we're going to sell bonds, then we still have. I would ask for you to be involved, Les, in identifying how much should we spend on Meridian and where. How much should we spend? I know Church Road's an issue, whether we should spend it on Church or identify some other areas. We know we have about 3.4 million that we could spend with this bond issue. And then also, if my calculations in my head are correct, we would have probably another $500,000 of existing funds in the water fund, capital bond debt fund, that we could draw on too. So what I suggest is that we could just rename that, instead of just Meridian, to Meridian, Church, and other water mains, Meridian, Church, and other
Yeah,
water
because
mains.
these are short stretches. They're not long like Park Lane. Oh, they weren't long like West River Road.
Okay. So how about we change it to Meridian, Church, and other water main replacements? That would be the description?
Right.
For the additional.
Yeah. And then I'd like you to participate with Derek and John, myself, and meet with our engineers and try to come up with repairing the worst water mains first.
And some of the oldest stuff, even if it doesn't break, you need to look at that, because that's the infrastructure that hasn't been addressed. It might not have a break, but if it's old, you better look at it.
Well, you won't have the flow.
Yeah, when you look inside the pipe and you got a 6-inch pipe, and it might have a 4-inch flow, it's time to replace it.
Well, I think, you know, all we're talking about is we want to start with the worst and work back, but we want to replace it all. All of it needs to be replaced. It, you know, obviously, the worst stuff first.
Well, we can afford it.
Simple as that.
Well, how's that sound? You're familiar with these water main lessons?
Oh, yeah.
That's, John Keim and Les, and maybe even some of the other workers, they might have some ideas. They look at this pipe when it's broken. And we need to listen to them a lot, because we're not there. We can't see it. It's underground.
But our department knows, and they can put that information together for us. They know where the
Yeah.
breaks are.
Well, it's not just the brakes, it's the old stuff,
Well, yeah. Well, we know where the old stuff is.
hopefully.
The other thing that's
Some
helpful,
of
the other thing that's helpful is last meeting we had a report about the reliability of the system, and they flow tested the system, and you know we can look to that as well to see what areas of the mains aren't flowing the way that they should based upon their capacity or intended capacity. So there's resources that are available to us to be able to give you the information you need to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the township. So.
And when you think about water, we all know it's important, but I go back to 1983, 1984. That's when the 24-inch came across for the first time. And before that, we had one water source at the north end, at the toll bridge. So that's not that many years ago that we only had one source. And we need to keep reinvestigating the infrastructure, because a lot of it has been around for a long time and patched in places.
Okay, other comments, discussion? Phil, you've been involved in this.
My only comment would be on this overall request is to get some of these numbers of what we're proposing for the, and this would be under the bar screen project. I'm having trouble getting the numbers to add up. And so when we get to that, I'd like to maybe see where
We are at that right now, and all I would say to you, that bar screen's different than what you're looking at.
Right. So I mean, I'm just on the overall,
We're going to
from
deal
the
with this
water
sheet.
main and the bond issue and that, I don't have any further comment. I think we're on track there.
Bill, this is the sheet that rounds everything off. When we talk about a bond issue, we're talking about round figures.
Right. No, I have no further comment on that.
Not those
That
details.
seems to make sense.
So the one thing we could do to round it off based on this sheet you just handed out tonight is we're $250,000 short of the $6 million. Our intent was to put it in the water main, so we'll just make that water main 3.45, okay? Follow me? Am I right on my figures? 3,450,000, and it would say Meridian, Church, and other water main areas.
Right.
Okay. So that's what our motion,
Well, yeah, your motion is fine, I think. The motion is right here,
general, right.
is general, and it's $6 million.
And again, the budget has anticipated the payment of the principal and interest going forward, so we have the money in the budget. We've sat down at budget time with our finance director, and that money's there going forward. So we can make the principal and interest payments, and we actually figured it, John, on a 4.5%, but the current market that I saw and talked to Ann about a couple weeks ago is a little below
It might even get better,
4%. Yeah, it might even
Yeah.
get better.
which then you can adjust your projections too.
So, are there other comments? Ted?
My only comment is the last bond we went out for, we came in at about 2.65. This one I would anticipate we're going to come in under 4, probably 3+. And if the market keeps going the way it's going, it might even be lower than that. I mean, we're in a very favorable bond position right now because of our credit rating and because of our past history. So I would think that I have every confidence that even if we don't, we haven't designated a full 6 million, we certainly have $6 million worth of upgrades to do in the island. So it's a good investment.
And then what happens is if you go for a large number and the interest rate is less, you have more principal to apply to your projects.
Yeah, as long as we're not going to affect the rates, which we are not at this point. I think I think we need to do it while we can, because these bond rates are not going to stay where they're at. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
And that's the other thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. When we talked budget this year, we did not increase the water rate, and this bond issue will not cause us to, just on that alone, need to increase the water rate, because it's in the budget, it's funded today. And so I guess that's an important point. So Jim, you hadn't spoken up. Lenny, you want to chime in or not?
But I've said everything. I'm all set.
I see we have one other trustee that joined the meeting tonight, Jim Nelson.
Thanks for...
Mr. Nelson, you're welcome here. And
I was 6 minutes late, but as I get older, I should take the elevator, I guess. Anyway, we did increase, not water, but
the sewer rate.
the sewer rate. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody understands that out there, that, because people get the wrong idea. They don't listen with both ears at times.
Well, we increased the sewer rate for two reasons. One, because of the bar screen project that we're undertaking, and two, because of the orders from the state, the consent agreement, where we have to go through an asset management program, a state required.
Mm-hmm.
So we increased the rate 2.8% or something of that sort.
It was just a point of information. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other comments? Any from the public? Any questions? Everybody's all set? Okay. We have a motion. I'll read it again. That the DPS Commission recommends to the Grosse Ile Township Board the solicitation and sale of revenue bonds in the amount of $6 million to finance water main repairs and bar screen project at the Grosse Ile wastewater treatment plant.
And I supported it.
Motion.
Yep.
You did?
I
make the
supported
motion.
it.
Who
Yep.
supported it?
I did.
Who made the motion?
I did.
You did. Lenny did? Okay, so it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. One other thing the minutes should reflect. What I'd like to do, Derek, is if this is approved, this is going to go to the Township Board when?
September 9th.
September 9th.
September 9th. Assuming, what we'll do is put on our agenda authorization of water main for the next day, I guess it is, September 10th,
Right.
our regular meeting, second Tuesday. Authorization to proceed with engineering plans for whatever water main we decide to include. And before that meeting, I'd like this in the minutes, a committee of John Keim, yourself, Derek, Les Schmidtke, will get together with our engineers, discuss Meridian, Church Road, and other water main improvements, and come back with a priority list and an estimated budget, okay? And the other thing I want to mention in talking with our engineers, this is going back a couple months on the water main. Our hope is to bid the water main either probably at 1st of January, the beginning of January, mid-January. We'll get some good bids by that time. Maybe mid-December, before the holidays. It depends on where we go. But by bidding that time, contractors can start the replacement as soon as spring arrives. And in that kind of a market, we should get better bids. They'll be hungry to line up work for the summer. So that's the thought on that. And as we proceed then, I just want to say this, into the next budget year, which is next February and March, we'll be able to look at what funds we have on hand from not making the principal and interest payments, and even maybe we'll have cash to do some. I'm going to guess it could be $400,000 or something, do more water main. So, if we want to. Okay? Thank you. Next item has to do with the bar screen project. I'll let you start out, Derek, if you wish, and we have Ryan here Ryan is with our wastewater treatment plant.
Sure. The chairman had expressed the the nature of this project, what it involves, what it's intended to do. I know that DPS Commission should be well versed in the process that's gone into engineering this and bidding it. So if there are any questions about the scope of the work, please let me know. What the approval tonight is for the expenditure of $1,169,716. And for that, it includes the work associated with the bar screen with low bidder process piping and equipment incorporated. There is a recommendation of award by Charles Rains Company included in the packet, so they are being recommended as the low bidder. In addition to the base bid of $744,480, there's also a recommendation by the engineers to include cleaning of the wet well with contractor Safeway, who's currently doing other work in the township at a cost of $30,000, and then additional scope of work to the tune of $85,000 for the replacement of the main sluice gate at the plant, being that the wet well is going to be pumped down and shut down during this project. It's an opportune time to replace that sluice gate that is currently, from all indications, non-operable. So it's a good time to do that work and lends itself to some efficiencies, being we're going to have a contractor in the area of that sluice gate at that point in time. So I know, Phil, you had mentioned that you had some questions about the numbers lining up and where the numbers are coming from. I'd be more than happy to answer any concerns or questions you might have relative to that.
Yeah, Derek, I was just looking over the costing of this and trying to go from the $744,480 to the $1,008,376, and then step that up by $161,340 to come up with the $1,169,716. And I went back to the original proposal that was in the proposal for the $6 million bond issue and looked at the 20% contingency cost and the 19% engineering cost. I applied those to it, and then I added the $85,000 and the $30,000, and I come up $20,000 short. I just can't get these numbers to jive. I can't come up with the $1,169,716 by applying. I guess where I'm confused is what composes the $1,008,376 number, and then the $161,340 is other engineering and contingency cost or what have you. I'm really just trying to get the numbers to add up, trying to balance the checkbook, so to speak.
So engineering is generally based upon a percentage of the total project cost. So when you take a look at, let's do 744,480 plus the estimated 85,000 plus the 30,000, and then you're going to do 20% contingency on the 744,480. So you're adding 148,896. That gives you a total of $1,008,376. And then when you add the contract administration of 19%, 161,340, you end up with the 1,169,716.
Okay, so we're putting 20% contingency on the 85,000 and the 30,000.
No, just on the
just on the
774.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the 774 plus 148,896, which is that 20% of that.
Correct.
And then
your 30.
Then add in the 30, add in the 85.
And
then take 19% of that whole amount.
No.
If 19% of that whole amount is 161,340, then yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's how the numbers come out. I guess where I am with this is how much engineering's left to be done on this?
No, it's paying them back for what's been done.
That's already been done then.
Yeah, but it's
Some of the work has been done, so.
covering those costs. Well, primarily, most of the engineering
That's what I was going to say.
been done
This isn't-
already.
This is
Not future. The only
This-
future,
not future,
is-
right.
is inspection and contract administration.
Right.
But we've taken a year and a half to go
No, I
back
know
and
this thing's
forth.
been going on and on
Yeah,
and
and
on. And I
we've-
mean, the specs all have the floor being torn up
This
and this
is
being
covering
done.
those costs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
We've been
cost in the
pulling out of the
project.
fund balance of the wastewater plant.
Okay. All right.
And it's been a high-end engineering, time-consuming project. If you recall, there have been a couple of scenarios that were rejected by MDEQ and in the permitting
I
process.
remember that, and that's what I was just wanting to make sure this wasn't going to be on top of paying all that back and everything else.
No.
Okay.
No, and the 85,000 is my understanding, after it was bid, through the bid process, the sluice gate is totally rusted up and
Corroded.
won't open, right?
Well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Ryan's the one in the plant, I'm not, even Les isn't. So how often has the sluice gate been used as best you know? Or based historically on what you know historically?
Historically, it hasn't been probably 40 years. Not in my knowledge.
Okay, so it hasn't been used in 40 years.
No. So,
So John, I'll just answer the question too. I asked the question, why would you close it? And there's two reasons. One, the primary one is if we get a spill in our system, like some kind of gasoline spill, right, or some kind of toxic contamination, we don't want to allow it to mix in with the other sewage. So we would shut it down in the what's the name of the big tank, the equalization tank, and we
Yes.
would treat it there to take whatever contaminants are away. That's one reason. And the other reason is when you're working in the wet well, you want to be able to shut the water off temporarily.
I understand.
Did I say that right?
yes, you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand it, we've never used it. That's the thing, it's 85,000. We've never used it ever.
I don't know if they ever used it. He's only been here
Well,
3 years, but
I asked
I
the
think-
question historically.
I think that the sluice gate was engineered as part of the plant for a purpose. The fact that it may have not been operated in quite some time isn't necessarily because it wasn't necessary or needed to be operable. It was because it hasn't operated. So if you take a look at the condition of it, there's no way that thing has been operated in 20 years because there's no way it would have operated in 20 years.
Okay,
So
is that part of the MDEQ requirements? Or is Ohio's 19% part of that 85,000? 10% would be, $8,500. 20%
I'm not
would be
sure that.
$17,000 in engineering fees.
We have another sluice gate, which is right before the water leaves the plant, which works. So if we had a spill of something in the system, we could actually wait until it all flowed into the plant and then shut that sluice gate, which would it would keep it all within the plant, though. So if we had a spill, we could isolate it.
The issue with that, though, is the damage that's caused by the contaminant within the
And
plant.
it would wreck our RBCs and our whole secondary.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
the sluice gate
yeah.
for the things coming in is important. The fact, yes, we haven't, evidently, as far as
Yep.
we know, it hasn't been used.
But it's there for a reason.
It's there for a reason, and it's going to cost a heck of a lot more than 85,000. Should we get something that we have to do that?
Yep.
And in
That's
this,
kinda, I don't disagree with it, but it's speculation, that's all. We just don't
Well,
know. We haven't used it in 20.
no, we haven't. But And thank goodness that we have it.
A good example is it would be used in this situation if it was operable. The contractor that's doing the work in the plant is going to have to employ different methods in order to eliminate the flow to be able to work in the wet well, where the sluice gate would have helped out with that. So that's a good example right now of the preventative maintenance or maintenance that we'd be doing now and into the future that the sluice gate would assist with allowing us to do.
Right. So I mean, there's certainly more cost involved that he's got to rig something up where we could have just closed that off.
Yep, exactly. And then if in the future, if we got a sluice gate there, we'd make sure that we'd operate it, every month so that this would not happen in the future. It would operate.
Now, what type of a valve is it? You say it's a sluice gate. Is it a gate valve? Or is it a knife valve?
Steve, do you want?
This is really easy to help you guys out with a decision here, because I travel around the country and I work on these style of gates, these Rodney Hunt sluice gates. They're large cast iron castings. What Rodney Hunt does to make them so that they operate for a lifetime well beyond our lifetime, 40 years is nothing, okay, is all of the mating faces are bronze that are embedded into this giant cast iron gate. Just a flat plate. It looks like a waffle iron for strength to reinforce it. That's the backside that you see. And it's covered with all kinds of shit. You'd think it would never, ever move again. But around its frame that's molded into the wall or thimbled into the wall, you have stainless steel bolts and bronze faces that are wedges. And this gate, as soon as it moves 1/8 of an inch, it's away from the face that it mates to. And it should move up and down freely.
It's a wedge like this.
All it does is it slides in its last 1/8 of an inch. It pushes more laterally to close than it does vertically. Okay? It's a beautiful design. It's around everywhere in the United States for water, wastewater, stormwater, and I've dealt with them up to 84 inches in diameter. I was just out in Nassau County and got one free. And
we had that type of valve in our system where there's two pieces with two round holes, and they hang on these bolts like this.
Yep.
Inside that gate valve. And when that gate valve goes down, it's a wedge, and it pushes against it.
Right.
And the problems that I ran into in some of the valves we had to change, that flapper rusted off.
Right. Well, this is...
Open the valve up, and you might open one side, but the other one stays closed.
This is totally different than that. This is all of the work is being done from a side that's accessible, and it's meant to be adjusted. You can open and close a gate several times. Sometimes it won't seal 100% at the top or 100% at the bottom. And the wedges that float in its final adjustment, because of debris or just because of the way it was pushed down, it won't seal. But motion and using it will eventually seal it. A gate like this, what I would recommend, and Ryan will agree with me on this, is that get a specialist from Rodney Hunt out here to inspect that gate, and he's going to tell you to put a new actuator and stem on it and keep the existing gate and save yourself way more than $85,000.
Now, just explain that again, because I don't work directly in that area. I've done a lot of different types of
Imagine a concrete wall with a pipe coming in.
Okay.
The fixture that's made by Rodney Hunt exists outside that concrete wall and in the wet well.
Okay.
And it's a vertical gate that has a frame that's molded into the wall. It was built in the construction of the plant, meaning that they put a thimble in the wall with all the necessary hardware to attach this frame. That frame is stationary. The gate moves up and down and mates to that frame and seals off the pipe. And what works on it to make it seal is on that frame in 8 places, 4 on each side, 4 on the bottom, and 4 on the top, are what we call hooks or dogs, and they're adjustable. Each one is individual. One can be tightened, over-tightened more than another if you adjust it improperly. When they install it, they lower the gate down in place without any water. They tighten it, and they feel with shims to make sure that the gate is almost sealed everywhere. Then another 1/8 of an inch down, it seals itself. It pushes itself or horizontally rather than vertically. Now do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
All of that's accessible inside the wet well. It's all there. The reason it's not operating is because the nut and the stem and that hardware is gunked up and frozen. How I can say this is I was the one 15 years ago that got the one on the effluent end of the plant free in 4 days' worth of work because I had to seal off the chlorine contact chamber to put in the new hardware in a chlorine contact chamber.
And Rodney Hunt is the manufacturer?
Rodney Hunt is the manufacturer.
Who would be able to advise in that regard?
Yes, yes.
And where are they out of? What
They're actually out of Massachusetts. But we have Rodney Hunt representative would be the same people that were getting the you're purchasing your bar screen from.
Mr. Chairman.
Boyce Cooper.
One question and one comment. The question is this thing essential to have it operational? I mean, it would be your recommendation to have it operational?
From a wastewater standpoint, having ability to isolate your influent is necessary for any major catastrophe that you have in the plant.
It was good practice to have it operational.
Yep.
Okay. And then one comment. I believe that the way that the motion is written and in Raines' recommendation, they say, we strongly recommend having PPEI repair or replace it during the flow isolation needed for the bar screen installation project. And this is an anticipated cost, not an actual cost.
Okay.
So
a repair is what I would recommend myself.
right, and I think once they get down there and they start working on the bar screen, they get the wet well clean, they see what they got, and then they can figure out whether or not it's a repairable issue or if it's a replacement issue. Right. Okay.
Anybody wants to see pictures of it, I can show you pictures on my phone of what I'm talking about and all these small fixture pieces on a large gate. And they're all sealable. They're meant to be left inactive for years and years and years and then brought into service.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it very much.
Is your employee the valve company or Suez?
I'm employed by Suez, and I'm a maintenance specialist in our mechanical services group, which we're contractors for all of our projects throughout the United States and Canada.
Don't go away. We probably have some more questions for you.
Thank you for that. That was
Good
very
information.
informative. And are you Kelly? Are you Kelly or Steve?
Steve.
Steve. Thank you, Steve. All right. So I guess, Phil, your questions have been answered on the finance?
Well, I'm still.
Well, I added them up, and they added up to the $1,169,000.
They do. I'm just. I guess my only question that remains is the $161,340,000. What's that number?
That's
Currently?
all the past engineering and inspection that's going to occur in the future.
I can get the DPS
Okay.
commission, the current number paid so far to Raines for this project.
Okay.
And then it'll be, the balance will be whatever's, less what payments have already been made, so.
I mean, that's a percentage of that 1,008,000, and it's about 16%. So that's
But
where that number should be.
It's a percentage, yeah, he's right, yeah, okay.
It's 16%,
Right.
which and
The way the percentages work from our engineers, they give you a percentage for a project, and they bill against that. We may not, very, very seldom do we ever exceed that amount.
Right.
So they'll bill their hourly rates up to that amount. That's the way that normally works.
I was just trying to get where it said in the other proposal, it talked about 20% and 19%, and we're over on this page and we're at
I wouldn't worry
some
about
number
that.
of 16%.
He was just trying to say that it's all inclusive. Those cost
Right.
estimates for the
Right.
bond,
Right.
that they're all inclusive. We're not going to come back and to say, oh, we forgot to add engineering or contract administration costs.
Okay.
That's all that was trying to do.
I guess we're looking at that whole page. So the proposed motion doesn't have as much information as the letter that's dated August 7th, 2019. And just looking at this is, and Charlie Raines and the gentleman that work for him now or own that company now, they've been around for a long time because Charlie Raines was involved in that plant for years and years and years. And he had a lot of faith in the operations and certainly was helpful in that regards. To that end, when I look at the numbers, the base bid, just the base bid, because at 20%, you might not have much, or you might have 20%, or you might have more. So if I look at the two bids, we got 744 and 778. So the difference in those two bids is $33,600. And as a percentage, that amount is about 0.0435% as an amount of the overall expense. Now, the reason why I'm concerned about this aspect of it is, I'll just call it the Flint water crisis dilemma, which always is in every single engineering situation. And by that I mean, when Flint got into their water stuff, they didn't realize how to operate their treatment facility, and they didn't add the right chemicals, and it caused a huge problem. It seems to me, when we're talking about just water mains generally, Les Schmicke knows an awful lot. We're very fortunate to have him here. And Suez and their predecessors, obviously this gentleman here has a heck of a lot of experience in the plant. And so it appears to me that the hands-on experience that has been going on, to my knowledge, Joe Keefe, is 1986 or maybe before that. So with those gentlemen having that knowledge for a long period of time, and I was on the township board when they had to take the roof off for repairs. That was a product situation. When the augers were defective and were replaced, that was a huge engineering process, and you're familiar with it, apparently. So it would seem to me, with hands-on guys operating the plant, and Ryan has, in effect, kind of, he has his comments tempered for purposes of construction by the fact that he works and operates the treatment plant. But it looks to me like the difference of $33,000 on what's over $1 million contract, which is what it's going to be, doesn't necessarily have to go to the low bidder in this case, who is not hands-on every day at this plant. And the low bidder, I'm certain, hasn't been involved in the plant as much as the Suez employees have, like this gentleman here. So I am of the belief that we should not take the low bid in this case because it's a minuscule amount, $33,000. But I am of the belief we should take the bid from Suez because they're hands-on, they're here day to day, and they've known this plant. There's a couple of more things. Should Suez perform the construction, and we're talking about $1 million contract, if they perform the construction and there's a glitch, they forgot the widget, okay? Let's suppose that happened. I got to keep it simple so I can stay on track. So if they forgot the widget, Ryan calls them and goes, you guys put this plant together, but you forgot the widget. They'll come back and fix it. We've got a hands-on day-to-day situation. For 10 years after the fix is, after the construction is done, not the fix, after the construction is done, there is a window of opportunity for the township through Ryan to spot a problem with this construction without any need to go to a litigation format. Now, the way the law is in Michigan, and I've been in the appellate courts on this, latent or patent, that means obvious or hidden defects, are not correctable or challengeable after 10 years. These fellas operating the plant, even on a hidden defect that no one knew about, Ryan didn't know about it for 5 years, and say the statute of limitations for whatever reason has run, those gentlemen can coordinate and fix the widget that was forgotten, that was a hidden widget. And that's why I really think when you're dealing with $1 million plus contract, I really think that we should not go with the low bidder. We should go with a bid that's $33,000 more, having the longevity of both past experience and future experience in this particular contract scenario. So the handcuffs on a low bid, I think, are ridiculous in this case, and I'm not interested in that at all. I think the second bid with the $33,000 increase is well in line with what we need to do on $1 million project. So figure out what the percentage is on $1 million. It's nothing. And I hope somebody else thinks the same way, maybe even 4 people.
I would say, John, that there are no handcuffs. There are no handcuffs with the lowest bid. We don't have to take the lowest bid. I believe it's something the engineer has to do for certain reasons in putting it forth to us. But we're not tied into having to do that. So you make good points.
I would make a motion.
You make good points.
I'd make a motion the bid go to Suez. The amounts as stated.
Before we do a motion, let's make sure everybody else has had a chance to talk.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is no home run deal by anybody. But I want to do the best job for the taxpayers. And if there's $1 million investment plus, I want to make sure that we're not driven into a dead end for $33,000. That's what I'm talking about. That's it. And I'd like to hear from everybody, from the guys on the commission here.
Derek, you wanted to speak?
Just a couple of points. Relative to the operation of Suez of that plant 10 years from now, there is no guarantee that that will be taking place.
Undoubtedly.
Right. So that's a good point, but let's just keep in mind their contract is up next fall or next spring, so there's no guarantee it's going to occur, past next spring.
But I'm talking about the past experience. That's going to be important when you install equipment.
Sure.
And that can't be replaced by any other bidder.
Another point is when I see bids like this, it excites me. When the bids are that tight, that means that the bid specs were tight because they were bidding the same thing. Their understanding was identical almost in this case to what was required of the job. So that's encouraging when you see those prices that tight. The other one was this is an item, a product that's being supplied by a separate vendor. So this isn't a job where they're supplying all the materials and they're supplying all the labor. They're purchasing a product and they're installing that product. So it's a little bit different, I think, than other jobs like a water main project or something like that. And then part of Rains's recommendation was to check the references of the company that was low bidder. My understanding is that they've done this job in other plants in this area, Trenton being one of them, so their references were solid relative to the work that they performed of this type for other plants in the area. So I wanted the DPS Commission to be aware of those items.
That was never an issue, the standard operating procedure, without a doubt. If they weren't, then Hal would have told us. So that's a given. So everybody that's on the bid is a given in that regards.
One other thing, there was a pre-award conference that we had in which schedules are discussed. That pre-award conference has not been had with Suez, so I'm unaware and not comfortable stating whether Suez would be able to meet the schedule that the vendor that's being recommended by Rains is going to be able to keep. This contract and this work needs to be done more than likely in January when the flows of the plant are low. Process Piping has indicated that they can meet that time frame and that deadline. That's not to say that Suez cannot, but we haven't had that conversation with them.
I suspect that could be done. If they say they can't do it, then that's the answer. But I'd like to hear from the other people
let's hear
on the
from
commission, really.
Let's start it with you, Jim.
What do you think, Jim?
Well, John makes good points. I certainly don't disagree with that. But the company that our engineer has recommended to us is a solid company also. And as Derek points out, we're talking about putting in piece of equipment. We're not talking about running the treatment plant or anything like that. We're talking about just putting in that. It would be interesting based on what Steve said, because it's not just fixing that gate. It was the other additional work included cleaning the well and repairing the gate. So it sounds like it could be less than what we have before us, based on what you've told.
And that's just the budget, the 85,000.
Right. It could be. It could end up being anything.
Why don't we ask this gentleman about
Hey,
what Suez could help us out with?
Well,
Let's just go around the table with this
Yeah.
issue. The bid
The only thing is, what I don't want to do is, I don't want to have this guy come last, and then somebody might change a thought process because they have not heard from this guy.
But-
That's the thing.
Let's stick with the
Yeah,
bid issue
yeah.
first. Then we'll come back and we'll give everybody an ample chance before we.
It's real important, it's $1 million.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, and I can think of several times when the township has spent $1 million.
No, that's all I had.
I got something.
Lenny, go ahead.
No, and I do appreciate all points, but I don't think today is the day to make the decision one way or the other. We've not had a final review. I'm unaware of the manpower requirements and the overall timing. I don't know if it's a 2-person job or a 20-person job, and then where do those human resources come from? I know that based on the recommendation, that the local company who's also on this bid has got local resources. I'm unaware of, I know Suez has got a very large national footprint. I'm unaware of those resources and what their timetable is to get 2 or 20 people here for a day or for a month. I'd like to see those details before we make a decision.
Which would go back to the pre-construction meeting or pre-award meeting.
And I do appreciate
Suez would be invited to.
Absolutely. And I do appreciate the bids being so close because Derek, you're absolutely right. The specifications and requirements for this were very tight and very easy to quote. Now let's see what it really means when it comes down to a human resource count and a timetable count.
Are you suggesting that we not make a decision tonight?
I can't make a decision today.
So I'll go right down the aisle and I'm going to speak up. John, I think you make some good points. I need to report, Derek, what happened this morning. At 9 o'clock this morning, we met with the regional manager, or the area manager, and Ryan, and began discussions about our contract renewal. Not that we want to go out and bid our Suez contract, but the contract's up April 1st or March 31st. Requires 90 days notice to give the firm if we're going to change companies or go out for bids. If we're going to go out for bids, we need to really, that's why we wanted to meet this early. I mean, here it is, August, and we scheduled a second meeting for September 5th. We received the beginning of a proposal from Mike Boven with Suez for us to chew on. The conflict I see is that, let's say we can't come to terms and we want to go out for bids. Then what you're saying, Suez is here today during the construction of this bar screen project. I see the only complication is if we were to award, I mean, I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm just saying it's an issue that's out there. If we decided to go out for bids and bring another firm in, and there's a lot of issues that would speak against that, because your performance is good and having the resources like Steve here are excellent, as well as Ryan and others. But we could be in the midst of rebidding this, awarding to another firm when Suez is constructing this project. So one thing I think we need to do is take a little time. That is a conflict, potential conflict. My feeling would be,
I want to hear what the conflict
the conflict is if we were to decide to go out for bid,
Okay,
and we awarded some other firm,
okay.
then they're building the project.
What's the conflict? They've already got that contract.
All right.
There's no conflict.
I see a potential conflict, John.
Well, there isn't.
And we learned about,
Respectfully disagreeing.
respectfully, I will share with you in private, similar circumstance at a wastewater plant where a change was made and some work was not completed by the firm that was being that didn't receive renewal of a contract.
But that
just-
doesn't involve.
so my
Suez,
point
and
was-
it doesn't involve our plan. It really doesn't.
My point is, we ought to resolve this conflict about the bidding. I mean, I see a potential conflict here. And I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but I think that we need to maybe not act tonight, then table the matter and try to deal with these other issues as well. So that's my thought.
I think what would happen is if Suez should get the contract, then they perform and they complete the contract. And if there's a problem with their performance, that's a separate contractual situation. It's not a conflict. A lot of times, spaghetti gets thrown on the wall, and you're not doing that. But a lot of times spaghetti gets thrown on the wall, and it really doesn't pertain to anything that's germane to the topic. These guys get a contract, they perform it, contract specs are supposed to be written and adhered to, and it's just that simple. If they forget the widget, they got to put it in. I don't care who's going to be the operator 10 years from now, but the fact that you were the operator for the last 15 or 20 years does count, because you're not putting in a light switch. You're putting in $1 million worth of equipment, and I've been involved in those $1 million lawsuits in other areas, and equipment doesn't always function the same way. Even though you might buy the materials, the way it's installed is very, very important. And I've had experience in federal court with major construction cases that involved interesting materials treatments, and I've seen it over and over and over again. The operation of the equipment that comes off the shelf from the supplier is very important to the integration of the overall situation. It really is. You can't ignore it.
Okay, Phil?
Well, I was, before coming in here, I looked over the bids and looked at the difference in the bids, and even though the end number is really close, the item numbers are all over the place. So, I mean, we've come up with a real close end number, but if we go down through the item numbers, it's one's double of Suez is double of what they are, they're double of what Suez is, and it goes that way all the way through all the item numbers. So I don't know whether I could say the bids are real close, because the end number's close. I guess my question is, has the other company installed this exact same piece of equipment, and has Suez installed this exact same piece of equipment? And what is not so much their experience just as a general contractor, but do both companies have the same experience with this particular piece of equipment, or does one outshine the other in what their experience is with installing these screens? Do you know, Derek?
I can tell you that the references were checked for the low bidder. I don't know that the references were checked for Suez. They might be stellar and they might have more experience, but I'm not prepared to give you that answer, because I don't know that Rain's checked the second bidder's qualifications or their references or how many times they've installed this type of product versus the piping company that's listed on here, PPEI.
Because I know when we were talking about this, the whole system had to be very customized to our particular installation. It wasn't, we couldn't just take what we were shown initially from Ryan and oh, that won't fit. We have to narrow this or widen that or steepen this.
The application of the product is a bit different in this plant than it is in others because of the space restrictions. So there is some difference between our plant compared to others that this product has been installed. The product has been customized slightly to be able to accommodate the restrictions that we have there. I think it's worth noting, and I don't want to ever pressure a commission or a committee to make a decision, but I will tell you that we're working under an accelerated schedule here, because shop drawings have to be formulated, the product has to be built, and we have to do the installation in the wintertime. So the schedule that's been established for the approval, with a recommendation coming from this board going to the township board on the 9th, is purposeful. There's a reason behind that schedule, so we can meet the timeframes of installation in January. So when you take a look at approvals or potentially taking a look at another vendor, going back and reviewing whether their references check out and whether they've done this work before. If we decide to go back and do that, we need to make sure that we're still ready to go forward on the 9th of September.
Well, let me add to that. I mean, just the next proposal after this is a schedule of a special meeting. So it would seem to me we have another shot at this and still make the 9th if we wanted to just get some more questions answered.
Right.
And maybe tonight, when you get a chance to speak after you hear everybody, Steve or Kelly, you can address that timing issue too, because I don't know, the plan was January, but February is pretty dry too, usually. We'll see. Maybe you can address that issue. Phil?
I mean, if we weren't going to be going to the board until the 9th of September.
You're right, we have time.
Yeah, we would still have time.
Yeah. Or another month even.
Yeah, Phil,
If you're looking at January, February build time.
I will tell you, the engineers have told me January, so I have not discussed February with them. They've told me January.
Sure. So do you have any other questions?
No.
Les?
That's it.
Well, I feel the same way as John and Phil about looking at this thing. And Suez has been there for many, many years. And even if this is a change in April? It's highly
Operators, yeah.
It's highly unlikely that there is going to be a change. Because how many years have these people been doing this for our plant?
Yep. And it all is going to depend on if we can work out a reasonable adjustment.
And Jim Budney, I think, was the one that negotiated one of the transfers of a new contract.
The last contract is the one.
That worked out pretty good for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I negotiated the last
That's an
contract.
understatement. It worked out very good for everybody.
Yep. Got a good memory there. All right, so Les, anything else? Go around the table to Ted.
Excuse me. I'm really not in a position to second guess the engineer, and I'm also not in a position to second guess Derek and his recommendations. I think the bid process we followed was the right bid process. I think the outcome was probably the right outcome. I would acquiesce to both the engineers and Derek for a decision on this. Obviously, the engineer has got a lot at stake here if he's going to make the recommendation. I mean, his reputation in a multi-million-dollar contract that's been going on for as long as I've been around. And we have a pretty adequate supervisor engineer that's reviewed this. And I would just acquiesce to both Derek and the engineering group.
Well, I think in respect to John's point, I don't think the engineers have done the analysis with the second bidder.
I don't know.
They did with the first bidder,
know.
so I think we should allow time for that. Jim Nelson, you're trustee. You're at our meeting. I'll just give you the opportunity. You want to say anything, or do you want to pass? It's like the public, you're like the public here.
Being a man of few words, I will have to say that I'm not really up to speed on all these intricate pieces of this puzzle, which is pretty involved. I do enjoy hearing all these things. I'm hearing both sides. I don't think a decision tonight is correct. I think we should talk about it at the next special DPS meeting, and because there's a lot of stones have to be unturned, it sounds like, tonight after what I hear tonight.
Okay.
Jim, you're saying no.
Bill, I just add, because I guess I side with I'd certainly side with Derek and with Ted. We have a process. We have our engineers. Our engineers have looked at this and made a recommendation to us. I think we're starting to mix up the operation of the plant, which Suez has been wonderful at, versus putting in a piece of equipment, which the people that have been recommended to us are able to do. We went through the bid process. They're the ones that are recommended to us. we have a lot of things going between now and the end of August. I don't know that we can get the information even by our special meeting. And I would just have everybody just take a deep breath, step back, and understand that this is not the operation of the plant. This is putting in some equipment, which I believe the people that have been recommended to us know how to do it.
Okay, if there are no further comments from the table, I'll invite Steve and Kelly, unless the audience has anything. Ryan, I think we'll just bring them up. Are you comfortable with that? And can you address any of our issues about your bid and about
Yes.
your capabilities and your thoughts?
Let's start
Experience,
with
timeframes, all the
capabilities. That might be something that'll be most helpful. One of the very first one of these that was installed in Michigan was installed in West Branch, Michigan. It's 2 foot wide, 14 foot long. It's still in service, and that was installed in the year 2001.
By Suez or their predecessors?
By myself and another gentleman by the name of John Wellness, he retired last year. It took us 2 days for demolition on the existing one that was there, and it took us 1 day to put the new one in. We did start up on a 3rd day. The installation is not hard. The building that this one's going in is extremely difficult because of the rigging and the overhead space that's there. At South Huron was kind of a similar situation. Those were done 1 year apart from each other. It took 2 weeks for the first one for demolition and installation. It took 1 week for demolition and installation for the second one that was installed. They're 5 foot wide and 28 feet long. We installed one for the city of Mount Pleasant. We had a 4-man crew, and it took 3 days to install it. I've worked on them all over. The common problem is on the drive unit. The main drive unit, the gearbox has a bearing that drives the main shaft. When the main shaft gets rags on it, this debris that it's removing from the waste stream, if it's not cleaned regularly, it causes the bearing to fail. Once the bearing fails, you can lubricate it all you want, and the bearing has to be replaced. And if you don't, you have results of motors and gearboxes that deteriorate. All these ones that I've installed, the 2 at South Huron, the 1 in Mount Pleasant, and the 1 in West Branch, have operated faillessly. As a matter of fact, the 1 in West Branch, they moved during construction, I believe it was 2009. They moved it to a new headworks facility. And at that time did an inspection, and it was still an original spec. I mean, it's a great piece of machinery. You're buying the Mercedes of bar screens. It's really not the equipment. What I've seen happen is I've seen contractors take 6 months to install them, like in Pontiac, Michigan. In Nassau County, 7 weeks to install them. It's the timeliness of getting the old stuff out, preparing yourself properly, and putting them in. With a duplex situation like you have here, where you have 2 of them going in, the nice part is you only have to do 1 at a time. I was also the contractor that installed the original muffin monsters that are there. They're going to be demolished and taken out. I know those very well. I removed the original commuters that were there, okay, that were original to the plant. My method for installing it is substantially different. The question is why are numbers different? The existing contractor that you're looking at wants to stop the flow. I don't want to stop the flow. I'm going to build a coffer ahead of and behind the spot in the channel where the bar screen sits. If the flow comes up that day and is over top that 5 foot deep channel, I don't work on that part. I work on other stuff. When the flows are low, I work on it just like I did with installing the muffin monsters and taking out the original commuters. Never had any issues with flow, but that was 15, 20 years ago, you know. So it can be done. It's just a matter of how you do it. I've done this several times for different applications in wastewater streams.
In your opinion, how about doing it in February or March?
That's more of a Ryan question. He knows the flows. I know that wintertime flows are different. They're generally lower because you don't have the groundwater. But what can happen in the wintertime, and I'm aware of this, okay, is my education is biologist, okay? My trade is millwright. So it's a nice mate when it comes to putting equipment into a wastewater plant. When you have frozen ground and you get a melt, it runs to the weakest point. Finds a void in the ground along a foundation, and you got sewers that are overflowing just because you get a snow melt. So is it a dry time of the year? As long as there's no thaws.
What else can you comment on, either you or Kelly?
Well, with respect to the contract concern, Suez has a reputation, right? They're not going to go back on a contract that we've signed. We will follow that contract through to the end. Same thing with the operational contract. If you go out to bid, we're going to operate that plant to the last day if you select another operator. Excuse me. So we hold true to that. We have a reputation. We don't want to get a bad name out there for doing stuff like that. Like Steve said earlier, we work all across the country supporting our projects, but also supporting external clients as well. Excuse me. So any concern with that, I can appreciate, but I'll stand here, and that's not Suez.
You gentlemen are located, you said Canton?
I live in Grosse Pointe, and I keep an office at our Wixom project, or sometimes when we had the South Huron project, I kept an office there because it was a large facility. But I work in essence...
You're in Michigan.
I'm here in Michigan, yeah.
We both reside in Michigan.
Yeah.
All right.
Wixom, is that near, what, that's near the Ford Wixom, right there?
Yep, well, the Fort Wixom plant now is a Menards.
Yeah, it's a Menards.
Yeah, well, they're a good store.
What's it called? It's called, it has a coin name like that, like...
something park.
Engine plant Menards or something like
Okay.
that, or something
Okay.
like that. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Thanks.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
All right. So judging from what I've heard tonight, would it be the pleasure of the board to table this? One of our next items on the agenda is to schedule a special meeting of this commission so we can open up refuse bids. And that meeting is scheduled for
27th.
27th.
Now,
That's Tuesday, the 20th, August
Yeah.
27th. Would it be the pleasure of the board to table this item until then? And we'll figure out what we want to try to accomplish between now and then?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Derek, I'll let you speak up on that.
Yeah, if that's the decision of the DPS commission, I want to understand from you what you're looking for in preparation of that meeting. So are we looking for reference checks with Suez to determine whether the schedule would work with them, and then be able to compare the
schedule,
two?
the time and the experience.
Okay.
This gentleman's mentioned 4 different installations that he did with the same type of situation, but it was different in each case, and this one's different from those.
And that's fine. I just want to be clear about what information you're looking for so that you can make the most informed decision possible. So
I think John's right, and I
Any
think
and all information pertaining to Suez's qualifications and capability of completing this job in an admirable fashion on a schedule that we need to adhere to based on environmental concerns.
also, you mentioned that our engineers had a pre-award meeting with the contractor?
they did, but they just wanted to, they met with them to make sure that they could meet the schedule that the engineers wanted them to meet, that they were available and that
We'd
that
want to
would
have
line
that same meeting with Suez.
up. Okay.
And then
Derek, I'd be particularly interested in the number of this specific type of equipment both bidders have installed successfully. I mean, how many have they done? Where have they done them? And checked with those references specifically concerning a bar screen installation.
And the time that it took and the sizes that were done, this gentleman referred to 4 of those, so that's pretty interesting.
And then I think we'd have apples to apples. And I agree with Ted, and I agree with Jim and everybody else that we put a lot of faith and credence to our engineering staff, and we need to continue to do that. These are just questions that I have.
Sure.
Are there other questions that we haven't thought about we want to accomplish in that time? I think it's the same treatment that the engineers have gone through with process piping and equipment. Just whatever that review was, we would do the same thing with Suez in this case.
Clear to me. Sounds good.
Well, why don't we entertain a motion to table the item, and assuming we meet on the 27th until to the 27th.
So moved.
Table, oh, support that.
Okay.
Wendy, I'll support it. Move to table.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I want to thank you for being here, Steve and Kelly. Do you have business cards you can leave with our director? If you would, please. I know Ryan probably knows how to get a hold of them. So the next item on the agenda is, because we're out for bids, and there are at least 4 firms bidding on our refuse contract, we decided, because of the schedule of the Township Board, and the contract is up November 14th, if we're going to change vendors. And we did meet with Waste Management, and because of that meeting, decided to go out for bids. So we're recommending that we schedule the meeting for the 27th. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Yeah, the purpose of the meeting is to review bid proposals. I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it would be, now it would be for both items.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yeah.
I may really quick, so I believe ZBA has a meeting scheduled for the 27th.
August 27th, they do.
At 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock.
No.
No, at 7.
At 7.
At 7 o'clock. So we want to use this room, we'd have to do it prior to that and be done by 7
By
o'clock.
7.
Or we could use the other room.
But then
Special
obviously
meeting.
wouldn't the-
Use the other conference room that's down the...
Could we pick a different date, because I have to be at the ZBA meeting?
Yes, we need to.
Then we have to.
You can't do that right now. You don't know the calendar.
27th is,
What day is it?
So that's a
don't know.
Tuesday, that's a Tuesday night,
That's a
right?
Tuesday.
Generally, there's no...
I'll tell you what, the Wednesday is open.
Or the Monday. You guys don't.
I know Wednesday is open, because that's normally when we do our Q&As.
Okay.
So it's
I'll be here
my
Wednesday.
date, and we're not doing it in
On
August.
a Wednesday.
We have medic training on Wednesdays.
How about Monday? Which your
Monday works
normal
better.
meeting date of the
You would normally have a council meeting or a board meeting on that Monday, wouldn't you? And you
Yeah,
guys,
we don't have it.
And you don't have one.
We don't have it, so Monday would be good.
That work? 26th?
the 26th?
26.
26th?
Is that I can
That's a
open up
Monday.
That's a
Yeah.
Monday? How about the 26th?
7 o'clock.
26th is a Monday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important enough issue. We should be on
You
cable.
want to do it, what time do you want to do it? 7?
Good 7 o'clock? You want to do it earlier?
I'd prefer earlier, but
You know, sometimes it's hard to get here. If you're off the island, it's hard to get back here.
If you're working across town, yeah.
Yeah,
It can be
it's
tough.
real hard.
7 o'clock.
well, not if you start in the morning.
That is. Yeah, the other business closes at 6 o'clock or 5:30.
So
7 o'clock then?
7 o'clock on the 26th.
bids are due on either the 21st or the 22nd.
I believe it's 21st.
21st. It might behoove us to have a meeting of the refuse subcommittee between when bids are due and when we discuss them to kind of digest what we're seeing.
Bids
All
are
right,
the
so
21st.
there's going to be if you saw the specs for the refuse, it's pretty extensive
Correct.
because of the pickup schedules, and we're picking up not only garbage, but recycling, and we have special, the yard waste and so
I
forth.
don't want to throw a wrench into anything, but a while ago, Ted brought up an interesting point. We're paying so much money now for recycling. Do we really want to do that?
Well, that's what we're going to do.
The options are
That's
all
what's
in
going
there.
to
Yeah.
It has all different options on that.
And,
Yeah.
you know, John, and it
That's very interesting.
could be that
concept.
bids are going to come in and flabbergast us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you this, Waste Management's proposal flabbergasted us
Yeah. Well,
on the recycling.
yeah. the
Almost
folks
like
across
they
the
don't want to
pond
pick it
accept
up
you.
anymore. So,
Yeah, plus we're paying that extra surcharge right now
yes,
for the fact that they can't recycle some of the plastics because they're
Can't get rid
not
of it.
numbered right. They
Can't get
can't correlate it.
can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
So,
You know, the funny thing, Bill, when you say that, it sounds like they don't want to do it anymore.
Not it.
There was something on television about the only company that is making money off of recyclables. Waste Management.
Not what they told us.
Yeah, I know, but they had it on television. They had the program.
Well, if it's on television, it's got to be true.
Must be true.
It wasn't on the internet. It was on television.
So there was a presumption of credibility with the TV set.
Right now, if you look into the recycling, there's literally no market for recycling.
The market that was there is gone.
Yep.
China has closed off all recycling from
what
the
they
U.S.
showed in this program was that they were making some kind of pellets that is used in injection molding and stuff.
That's only certain plastics. That's a very narrow, broad.
And that's where they said that they were making money off of that product. And they were running all this stuff, and it showed the conveyors and all that things.
Yeah, and they had a plant built someplace to handle it. I don't know.
It was
I think it's on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken.
That could be.
It was a commercial.
All right, so
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
on the refuse
anyway.
committee. Phil,
Yeah.
you're on it?
Yeah.
And Brenda is?
And
Jim is.
myself.
I can send out some dates. Obviously, the 23rd sticks out to me because that's the Friday after bids are due. I think it would be beneficial for the discussion that we're going to have on Monday about this topic for at least a portion of the DPS Commission to have reviewed things to get the lay of the land, per se, and what these rates are looking like, and maybe have a better idea for scope of services that we're looking at. So
the bids are open on the 21st. We're talking about a meeting on the 26th.
Right.
Are you going to be able to, you're going to spend your weekend looking at bids?
Yeah, the hard part is you don't really know whether you're going to have issues with the bids until the bids come in, and whether there's clarification that's needed from the bidders on what exactly they're submitting. I've had these come in a couple of times where they weren't really clear about what they were proposing. So I'm hopeful this bid document that we're using has been used by all the downriver communities over the past 10 years, so these vendors should be pretty familiar with what they're looking at, but I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that it's clear.
Right. So your goal overall, both refuse and the bar screen projects, to go to the township board for their September 9th meeting?
Correct.
Okay, so the Monday before that is Labor Day.
Correct.
For the 9th.
Right.
That doesn't work. What about Tuesday the 2nd? Let me just throw this out. That gives you more time.
I think it's September 3rd.
September 3rd. That's Tuesday night. Now, let me finish this thought. You could tell the township clerk you want both items on the agenda. When does the township clerk need your report?
They need the agenda items the week prior to that.
You give them the agenda.
Right. When do you guys normally get your packets, Jim?
Friday.
Right.
Or the Friday prior, so we should be
sometime
okay.
that
If we met on the 2nd and kind of knew where you were going with both, that would still work, right? As long as the clerk knows they're on the agenda, the items are on the agenda.
Yep.
Generate the reports. That would give us 5 or 6 more days.
Right. And that would be the 3rd, so
Issues.
September 3rd would be that
The Tuesday night. Is that our night? Is there another commission that meets on that night? You don't know.
I don't know offhand. Open space.
You're here.
Are they in here, Brian?
A
Is
lot of-
open space in here? What time?
Oh, yeah, because they're on TV.
I don't remember what time.
I think they might be like 6:30.
Since you're here, would you come in, please? The township clerk. I'm pleased to see you here.
When can we get you the information for the packet?
Basically, we need it. Well, we've always tried to get out the Tuesday before a meeting, but I can get out everything else I have, and at least if I have that by Friday, if that's okay with you getting it just for a weekend to look over, we can do that.
Yeah.
That's fine. Because I can get the rest of the pack out early if I can.
We could actually have, well, no, we couldn't.
What about Wednesday the 4th?
everything.
Do you have anybody
Yeah.
in here Wednesday the 4th?
No.
Okay, Wednesday the 4th?
It would work for me.
Work for me.
Wednesday the 4th, and
It's
then
a better
that
day.
means you've got to get the report out the next day.
As long as you guys make decisions on the 4th, then that shouldn't be a problem.
You'll
Yeah.
call the wet refuse subcommittee together before that.
Yes. Yep.
And we'll get some reports going earlier on the bar screen project. And that gives us a little more time on the bar screen project. September 4th?
Good?
Brian, I'm very pleased to see you here.
And at time, 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock on the 4th.
Yeah. Well, let's see if this can work.
Bill?
When would we want to meet
Not
prior
the
to that?
It's not the 26th.
Pick a time?
I'll send an email out to you guys and try to get some dates together.
The previous,
Open.
Better that
What about you, Phil? You have a specific?
I'm pretty open. I would go
yeah.
back to Wednesday,
conflict
the
on the 4th.
27th.
Go
On
back
Wednesday.
The committee would meet Wednesday, the 27th then.
That would be fine for me
can do
because I'm
7:30.
tied up that weekend, and
Yeah.
then that frees me up prior to that weekend.
Wednesday the 27th. you
This
mean?
is just for the committee.
Refuse committee.
Refuse.
Yeah, not the whole commission.
Okay.
So we're back to the 27th and the 4th.
26th.
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 No, the
27th.
September 4th is when we're going to meet as a commission. The special meeting on the refuse and on the bar screen project.
So it's not the 26th.
It's not the 26th. We're not talking, because there was a conflict there with the open space committee.
The refuse subcommittee would be Wednesday, the 27th, at a time to be determined.
Anytime
And then
can be-
the-
During the
Anytime
day,
for me then.
during the day is fine.
And then the special meeting would be September the 4th at 7 o'clock.
Wait a minute. Okay. Go back
Yeah.
to the first meeting.
Refuse, Wednesday, the 27th. At any time.
It's Wednesday, the 28th.
28th?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Wednesday, the 28th?
Yes. In August it is.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, that's fine. And then September 4th would be our special meeting.
Right.
Okay? So the motion then is to have a special meeting at 7 o'clock on September 4th to review bids for solid waste hauling services and for our bar screen project at the wastewater treatment plant. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Everybody clear on it? Written
Yes.
the dates down? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
And Suez has to be proactive in getting as much information as soon as they can to the Rains people to coordinate that.
Well, I think,
There's no street, there's no traffic control device, so you gotta be proactive in that regards.
I think Derek will take care of making that happen.
I'm sure he will, but they need to participate too, to make sure that they're not out.
Oh, yeah.
In some other endeavor to it when they need to be contacted.
All right.
That's all.
Gentlemen from Suez, you hear that? You're in agreement? You'll do what you can to work
Be
with our engineers?
proactive. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Bill, do you want to, while I'm thinking about it, congratulate Mr. Deputy Treasurer on his overseeing of the TVing of this meeting and on an interim basis? He's taking on the responsibility.
No.
Not following you, I don't think.
No, Jim, please, no. No.
I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I don't know what I'm missing here, but,
No,
okay.
I'll explain to you later.
All right. Now I've lost our whole agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, all right. Next we'll entertain motion.
1 second.
So Derek, you want to give your manager's report?
Yeah, just I'll go through it really briefly. Wanted to update the DPS Commission on the county intergovernmental agreement between us and the town, between the township and the county for the local roads project. I wanted to thank the DPS chairman as well as our Wayne County Commissioner Joe Palomera for his assistance in moving that quickly through the Wayne County Commission. It was approved. The IGA was on August 8th. We got word that it was approved on the 8th from Joe. We contacted the vendor on the 9th that was awarded the local roads project, which was Dominic Gaglio, and we had them come in, execute the contracts, and then go to their bond and insurance company to get the bonds taken care of and the insurance taken care of shortly thereafterwards. So those should have been resolved here, I believe, probably yesterday or even today. We had a pre-con meeting with Dominic Gaglio on Monday at 2 o'clock, and we looked at a variety of different aspects of the project. For everybody's recollection and for the reminder, the scope of the work involves asphalt work, and it also involves concrete sectioning and also joint repair and joint sealing. So what we're going to focus on within the first couple of weeks of Dominic being on the island is going to be some sectioning and some joint repair over by the school in order to try to get that knocked out prior to school starting at the beginning of September. So rains will be going out probably tomorrow to mark those sections and joints that need to be taken care of over by the school, and that'll be the first thing they'll work on. So notices will go out to the residents in that area, letting them know of what's happening, and then hopefully to get that work done before school starts. And that'll primarily be on Grays Drive and then also on Park Lane right around the school. From there, the schedule of work is yet to be determined because the asphalt work is going to be subcontracted out. So Dominic Gaglio needs to take a look at their vendor and talk to their vendor that's doing the asphalt work as far as when they can mobilize and be on the island to do those areas. So we wanted to focus on taking care of the stuff by the school first before school comes into session. So we'll be looking at scheduling the other work shortly there afterwards, and I'll keep you apprised and the residents as well of where we're going to be working and when we're going to be working in those areas. So that's all I have for the IGA. If you have any questions, I can answer those if you'd like.
Moving on.
Water loss report. Commissioner Schmidtke had asked for this report, so it wasn't updated for the month of July, but we'll have that for you at the next meeting. Overall, through the period of time that's indicated on the report here, we're at an average of 16.57%. So I will generate this on a monthly basis for you. It's going to be a rolling average or a rolling total because of the way we do our billings and stuff. That's the way it's got to be, and the different areas of town and when we're doing the billings versus the monthly bills we're getting from GLWA, which encompasses the entire island. So there's a bit of variety there on how they're counting our usage and how we're counting our usage. That's why you see such the differential between what we're being billed and what we're purchasing. But overall, you can tell the loss based upon a census of time or a census of water use over a period of time. So that's what we're doing here.
Derek, I want to thank you for this.
Sure.
It's something we should have been getting all along, so we know where we stand on our system.
Uh-huh.
And once you get this rolling, it only takes a few minutes to put it on that report, and we'll have it once a month.
Yep. So you'll be seeing that on a monthly basis then. And then wanted to update you a little bit on the drainage issues that were discussed at our last meeting. I did go around with the engineers. Board member Budney was also with us about a week or so ago, week and a half ago. So there are a couple of areas of the island that we looked at, primarily Park Lane, which we received a lot of complaints about at the last meeting, and then also Swan Island. There's also a small area over on Coleman that we looked at while they were here. Rains has some additional information that they need to generate so that they can present something to the DPS Commission. There's some dye testing they want to do on some of the areas over on Swan Island, and also reviewing potential costs for pump stations down on, or a pump station down on Park Lane. So they'll be doing that hopefully between now and the next meeting that we have in September, not our special meeting, but our regularly scheduled meeting, so that they can provide you a complete scope of what they deem to be the issues out there and what the potential solutions could be, with maybe some cost estimates so that you get an order of magnitude for if we were to do these repairs, what it would run. And then that way you have the information in front of you to be able to decide whether you want to proceed forward with engineering or to look at other options. So
that's going to be on our regular September
Correct.
agenda.
Hopefully.
A regular meeting for
Hopefully.
September.
There are some issues down on Swan Island with water levels and being able to dye test. It makes it difficult to do it with the water being so high, so some of that will be dependent upon whether water
Could
levels.
be September or October, maybe.
Right, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Now, maybe we're having a special meeting, maybe we want to think about not having a regular September meeting, only a week apart.
That'll be up to you guys.
Well, you can drive that issue, see what it looks like.
Okay.
Well, the only comment I would have on that is, I think I've talked to a couple of you. If the ditches are filling up because water from the Trenton Channel and Lake Erie and the Detroit River are backing up in our storm sewer, there's no outlet. Nothing we can do. We could spend a ton of money engineering solutions to no avail. So we got to be careful about that.
That's a good point. And the Water's Edge docks are unbelievably flooded right now. And I know the Army Corps of Engineers report substantiates that the highest water levels ever that were recorded in Lake Erie were 1985 and 1986, and I think it was at some point in the early summer, and we've eclipsed those now with the high water level. So Lake Erie has never been higher than it is right now. And not a young former member of this commission, Chris Dowen, she worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, and she was involved in a lot of meetings over a number of years. And she used to explain how important the environment around here is to helping to eliminate flooding. And once you fill those little inlets, there's no other place for the water to go. And we're an island, so we're stuck.
Okay, moving on. Now you're going to do the DPS maintenance?
Yep, I'll cover John's report. Park Lane Water Main Project, that for all intents and purposes is complete. Somebody had commented earlier in the meeting that the paving was done, the striping is done, and they're on to restoration. So we're in really good shape relative to the completion of that project. They'll be doing restoration over the next couple of weeks and hope to have that thing wrapped up here fairly soon.
I took a ride up there before the meeting tonight, and it really looks great.
And the feedback we've received from the residents is the same. And I will tell you that the feedback we received from the residents about the overall project was very positive. They were very understanding about the work that was going on, and they were very understanding with the inconveniences that they were presented with the road closures or the limited lane openings. So thanks to the residents up there for being understanding with the work that was going on up there. So I think they all understood it had to be done, and so
they didn't want any more water main breaks.
Right. And then as far as Safeway is concerned, they're 80% complete with their work for this year. According to John, they are ahead of schedule, and they're over by Country Club, or they're over at Westcroft Woods. They'll be doing Country Club Lane and the Interceptor along the canal. And once they're done with that work, that will put them at 100% for this year. I do want to mention briefly an update on our asset management plan. We had a couple of employees from Fishback come out and train both John and George on the manhole GPS collection. I borrowed a unit from Gibraltar that we had that when I was down there in order to allow 2 employees to work on the manhole GPS collection, and as of August 9th, we were at 300, which is almost a breakneck speed. So the guys are doing a really good job with collecting the information that we need to collect and in trying to meet that deadline that we have imposed for ourselves and what we had mentioned to the state we were going to do. So kudos to our employees, both George and John, for working on doing that collection. Things are moving along nicely. So that concludes John's report.
Next, we have our wastewater treatment plant update, and Ryan Walsh is here. And Ryan is just so Steve and Kelly know, he prepares a report for us every month and gives us an update of what's going on at the plant? Come on, Ryan.
First on the list is the elevator. Required work is finished as of this week right now, and the state inspector should be out next Monday. And he just has to certify the elevator, and then we can use it. So hopefully this time next week we'll have an elevator.
Finally, that's great news.
Yep. And the bar screen, I don't have nothing more on that. Added to that.
You sure?
About that.
Yeah. He's got,
Oh, gee.
for the lab and office, heat and AC issue, CE Rains came out a couple of weeks ago with an HVAC consultant and technician, and they pretty much looked at our system, and I'm just waiting to hear from CE Rains on that, whether we're going to, I guess, fix what we have, or we're going to basically start over. So I should have more information on that by the next meeting.
Right. That's the unit on top of the lab?
Yes. Yep.
Having trouble with it?
We have, yep. And right now we have a window AC unit, and we have a little heating unit also, which is in the lab, but yep. So.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you. We know you've been keeping busy, so thank you very much. Final, okay, so I don't know of any discussion items. The chairman doesn't have a report. We do have a letter in the packet. I'll just call to your attention from Gus Wilson on Hampton Road, thanking the DPW staff for taking care of a few issues for him and complimenting DPS. So thank you to Mr. Wilson for that. Call that to your attention. Commissioners' reports.
I have nothing more.
I have nothing.
John.
I have nothing further at this juncture.
Phil.
Nothing further.
Les. Ted.
Nothing.
And is it Mr. Flavin in the back? Do you have anything you want to? You sat through the whole meeting. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for sitting through it. We don't get that many people.
Thanks for being here. And thank you for Stephen Kelly for joining us this evening, and Ryan. And with that, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, do you have anything else, Derek?
I do not. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would make a motion to adjourn the meeting, but what is this date we have on here now?
It's going to be September 4th. Am I right?
Support.
All in favor? I don't know. I don't know. Who made a motion here?
I did.
And I support it.
Okay.
Supported.
The next meeting is September 4th. All in favor of adjourning indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.